Designed to do yesterday in the first day is to provide you with big picture perspectives. Today we're going to change this emphasis. For our next session, called Maximizing the Benefits of ICT, we asked Dr. Beñat Bilbao-Osorio from the World Economic Forum to join us once again to delve deeper into how countries can maximize the use of ICT. Today, we have a very, very distinguished panel of experts. These folks are doing it for a living every day around the globe. So with that, let me turn the moderation of the panel to Dr. Osorio, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim, and very good morning, everyone. This session, as Jim was mentioning, will deal with maximizing the benefits of ICT, and it will look at how different countries can actually push the different levers that can allow them to maximize these potential benefits of ICT. In this session, we will also look at which are the bottlenecks that we are facing or that different countries can face when they are trying to maximize these benefits, and also to some success factors in order to overcome these obstacles. In order to deal with these issues, we have these distinguished panels that I would like to introduce briefly to you. So first of all, we have Robert Pepper. Robert Pepper leads Cisco's Global Technology Policy team, working with governments across the world in areas such as the broadband, IP-enabled services, wireless and spectrum policy, security, privacy, internet governance, and ICT development. Prior to joining Cisco in 2005, Dr. Pepper worked at the FCC, where he served as Chief of the Office of Plans and Policy and Chief of Policy Development. Dr. Pepper holds a PhD from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Next to Dr. Pepper, we have Miguel Porrúa. Miguel is the e-government lead specialist at the Inter-American Development Bank. Prior to this position, Miguel was a senior e-government specialist at the Organization of American States, where he managed the organization's e-government portfolio. Miguel holds a bachelor degree in business and economics at the University of Oviedo in Spain and an MBA from the Thunderbird Business School in Arizona, the US. Next to Miguel, we have Mónica, Aspe Bernal. Mónica currently serves as the head of the coordination of the Information and Knowledge Society at the Mexican Secretariat of Communications and Transportation. From this position, Mónica promotes a set of projects which contribute to reach universal broadband access for the whole of the Mexican population. One of her main responsibilities is to implement the Mexican government social connectivity project called México Conectado. Mónica holds a master's degree in political science from Columbia University in the US and is also a graduate from ITAM. So welcome, Mónica. So next to Mónica, we have Wen-Hsin, who is an advisor of science and technology at the Department of Industrial Technology of the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Taiwan. Prior to this position, Dr. Wen-Hsin was working at the Industrial Technology Research Institute, also in Taiwan, in different capacities. He holds a PhD in electronic and computer engineering from the State University of New York at Buffalo. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us in this panel today. In order to start the discussion, I would like to ask you, Robert, if you could give us, a 5-minute presentation about which is your perception about the benefits that ICT can bring about, and more specifically about which are the levers that different societies can push on in order to maximize these impacts of ICT.
No, thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I am going to talk a little bit about, your favorite topic, which is the Global Information Technology Report, which you presented on yesterday. We see this as an extraordinarily valuable piece of work because it provides data over time, where we have time series, and we use it a lot, as you know, and as I'll discuss. You know, yesterday in one of the sessions, I think it was the minister from Korea, was saying that, you know, it's not just about supply. You know, 5 years ago, we would be, or actually since this is every other year, so 6 years ago, at the Congress, we'd be talking about the importance of having the deployment of the ICT infrastructure. And we'd be trying to convince ministers of communications and regulators. Well, that's done. We understand the economic and social benefit. I'll talk a little bit about, you know, sort of what's next. But in my mind, you know, and what the minister yesterday said, it's not just about the supply side, it's about the demand side. The way I like to think about it is moving from deployment to adoption to usage. So it's there, the networks are there, but if people don't actually subscribe, that's the adoption part, we're not getting the advantage. If people are adopted but they're not using it, right, we're not getting the advantage. So in terms of moving what, you know, might be thought of as up the stack from deployment to adoption to usage, we've done a number of studies as part of the GITR, and I want to focus on two of those in terms of levers. There's one study that we've done that we call our ICT ecosystem mapping, and what we've done is we've looked at what are the levers, right, which you've talked about, that government has working with the private sector, but particularly government levers that have an impact on the ICT infrastructure of a country. And we've identified a number of those levers. And we have three different categories. The first are ICT policies and regulation. The second is market dynamism, how dynamic is the market, and third is the business climate. Some of these, as you can see, are specifically within the ICT sector. So for ICT policies and regulations, what are the laws relating to ICT? What's the burden of government regulation on ICTs? What about intellectual property protection? In the market dynamics, it's about ICT competition. One of the things that we know that we've learned over the last 20 years is that where we have competition, we see more investment, we see greater innovation, we see faster adoption. Related to competition, there's the intensity of local competition and the capacity for innovation. Is a local economy, is a government fostering innovation with competition. And then in business climate, the general business climate is a huge lever. What are the procedures to start a business? How difficult is it? What are the procedures to enforce a contract? What about the efficiency of the legal framework? Those are all key variables and government levers, and what we find is that there is a very high correlation between the elements of an ICT ecosystem and the ICT investment. Then last year, our GITR study focused on elements of broadband plans, and we identified 10 elements in a sort of the ideal broadband plan, which leads to ICT investment. And these are all the levers. 5 on the supply side and 5 on the demand side. On the supply side, it's competition and investment. It's spectrum allocation and assignment. It's reducing infrastructure deployment costs. It's the core network expansion, the private investment for public goods, recognizing that the vast majority of the investment in the networks is private capital, private sector investment. And then 5th, on the supply side, is the inclusive broadband availability, for example, with universal service obligations, universal service plans on the network side. And then we identified 5 really critical elements on the demand side. And again, these are part of the government's levers. One, affordability of devices and access, and we'll talk more about this. Two, government leadership in broadband use and online activity. Government as a leader in using ICTs. Government as an anchor tenant. Third, absolutely crucial, ICT skills development. And that is moving on the skills from adoption to usage. Fourth, online, local content, local language applications. And fifth, consumer protection and empowerment. Those are all levers on the demand side. And when we combine the supply and the demand together, you have the right mix with the levers that can really drive deployment, adoption, and usage. And we'll come back to that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Robert. And thank you very much for providing us also with this framework that allows us to think carefully about the different levels of levers that the different governments, but also the private sector, will have to push on if we want to maximize the benefits of ICT. But Miguel, I would like to come back a little bit to this idea of the benefits of ICT, because, well, you lead the work at the Inter-American Development Bank, and you go to many countries in the region, and well, you see which are the potential benefits that ICT can have. Can you please enlighten us a little bit of your experience of which are the benefits that you see coming from ICT today, but also what you foresee in the future?
Certainly, Beñat. Let me start by thanking you and Jim and the government of Jalisco for having us here and for this opportunity for the IDB to share with the distinguished panelists and with the audience some of our ideas and our observations of what is going on in the region in the field of ICT. Actually, in terms of the impact, the benefits that the ICTs are having, and I structured kind of the points based on some of the ideas that you pointed out. On the economy, I mean, we could say many things, right? I will focus in 2 or 3 on each side of our society. And if I go above the 5 minutes, just please let me know, although the clock is quite big, hard to miss. But on the economy, we've listened some of the interesting messages yesterday from the government himself about some numbers on the economy. It is impacting competitiveness, as Robert was describing right now. It is becoming easier and easier to file taxes, to do custom procedures, to register a company, to become an entrepreneur in general. So it is increasing competitiveness in the society as a general. And it is creating new value-added activities in the economy. And some of the, also again, the examples we saw here in Mexico, in particular in Jalisco, about these creative industries, the game industry, the digital content that Robert was describing. So those are 2 important impacts in the economy. In the citizen, in the society as a general, one exciting thing is the empowerment of the citizen. I mean, the fact that the citizen has never had access to so much information about the activity of the government, and so many opportunities to get involved in that. And connected to that, the citizen, as we all know, is becoming more collective. The citizen is describing something that it was probably inside him or her, and the ICTs are just taking out, which is the willingness to collaborate and to work in team. And this whole crowding phenomenon, it is changing many things in our society. The crowdfunding, the crowdsourcing, etc. And we all are seeing what is happening right now in Asia, just because technology is facilitating that collective effort. In the government side, an entity suspicious of not changing quickly and not adopting innovations, I would highlight 2 or 3 relevant things. One is transparency. It is becoming harder and harder and harder for a government not to be transparent in the knowledge-based society, because technologies make it very easy if you have the political will. The second thing, and I think was mentioned also yesterday, is the fact that technology provokes or invites or excites, or whatever verb you want to use, and the public sector needs very much that type of provoke feeling to innovate, to question itself and to change. I think that is coming slowly. I mean, there's a lot in the front end, in the facade, but behind in the back office, there is a lot to be done. But I think technology is well positioned right now in public administration to put questions on the table about why we do things the way we do it. The third piece that is exciting to me that technology is bringing into the public sector is this idea of big data / business intelligence. And I think someone mentioned it yesterday. In the ADB, we were working very closely with some good universities and already documenting experiences. It is something that started mostly connected to security. I mean, how do I use all that big data to predict, to anticipate needs and behaviors in society? And that is just extending to health, to education, to environment, to water, to public services, to everything. And the power of technology to facilitate that type of policy design is immense, and governments are starting to adopt it. And I think that is bringing exciting times for policymakers. The last two pieces of impact I would highlight that affect probably across the board to all aspects of society would be the loss of privacy. I'm sorry, we lost privacy forever. I fully agree with the president of Uruguay that placed it very clearly in a nice video. Jose Mujica said, whoever is concerned about privacy, please look for another society, hopefully another planet. In this one, it will not happen. Right? The second piece of impact to me is, I would place it as opportunity. The magic thing of technologies, most of what I described is really opportunities in the economy, for the government, for the citizens, and probably opportunity for those that need it most. That's what, in my view, the magic of technology, and we'll discuss throughout this panel how can we be sure that those that need it most have access to it. But the access to education, probably the most powerful tool for progress that any citizen has, is immense with technology. And we all know that people are accessing to top-level training and courses created somewhere in the world while they live in Trinidad, Bolivia, or San Miguelito, Honduras, or wherever, and they don't need to move. And for the first time, they have access to that knowledge and to that education. So opportunity is the word. Opportunity in the economy. For those small entrepreneurs that somewhere in Latin America, in the case of the area and the Caribbean, that the work banks, somewhere they can create a business activity that can grow thanks to technology, because the world is, I agree with Friedman in that regard, Thomas Friedman is somehow flat in that sense. So opportunity, loss of privacy, and I think I will leave it there for the first round.
That's great. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you for, we should never forget, that ICT is unlocking all these benefits that Miguel was mentioning, because this is going to provide us the right perspective when we are talking about, what needs to be done in order to maximize these benefits. And also because you were mentioning again that, okay, together with these benefits, there might be also some risks that should be regarded also as opportunities. And this is something that different stakeholders need to understand in order to manage them appropriately. Mónica, Mexico is undergoing, I would say, almost a revolution in the sector in order to unlock these benefits that to a large extent have been a little bit mitigated in the country. Can you please share us your experience in terms of, which are the levers that Mexico are actually touching upon in order to implement this revolution that you are currently undergoing?
Thank you very much. Mexico is under deep transformation. We have had in 1.5 years 11 constitutional reforms: energy, telecommunications, labor reform, education, fiscal, anti-monopoly, law enforcement, a new injunction system, a new electoral system, transparency. I can't overstate the depth and the width of this transformation process we are living in the country. And the reform's main goal is to transform our economy to boost economic growth. We have finished now the legislative process, and we are moving to implementation, and that's what we have been wanting to the point together. And why the telecom reform? Because Mexico is the second Latin American country in terms of the size of its economy, and it is the 20th in Latin America in terms of internet users. The second and the 20th. So the gap is really an enormous gap, and we need to close it. Access to broadband and access to ICT generally is today a fundamental right in Mexico. And why is this? Because broadband is the way to get other fundamental rights. Because it reduces transaction costs, because it expands coverage and quality of public services. And most of all, because it impacts human capital. And human capital is the best road out of poverty. Now, if Mexico is doing such a fantastic job with its reforms, how can we be falling in international index? And I'm going to take advantage of having Beñat as the moderator, because moderators are usually too cozy because they sit and ask questions to the rest of the panel. So we can introduce some disobedience to this panel. How can we fall in the Global Competitiveness Index and in the Network Readiness Index from the World Economic Forum? And I'm using these examples because we have Beñat here. How can we explain doing all these good structural reforms and then falling in these indexes? And here is what is happening. The WEF index is partially based on perceptions, interviews to leaders. And Mexico's fall reveals the perception of uncertainty given the reform process. It is not necessarily what is, but what our leaders think it is. Mexico's position in those indexes cannot reflect the transformation that will take place once we have full implementation of the reforms. What it reflects is the economic uncertainty during the approval process of the reforms. That is a transitory effect, not immediate, probably 2 or 3 years, and it is a pill to cure our sickness. We don't like the pill, but we have to take it in order to get away from the sickness. We now have the legal framework for ICT complete, and we need to move to implementation to get those outcomes. We have had a first few positive outcomes of the telecom reform already. We have an independent regulator in place. We have antitrust regulation for the dominant agent in telecommunications. We now have foreign direct investment allowed in telecommunications up to 100%. Immediately we had the purchase of Satmex by Eutelsat. We had the entry of Virgin Mobile to the Mexican market, among others. And the key to maximize the benefits of ICT will be to generate certainty and long-term government commitment, predictability, and emphasis on execution. We need certainty to invest. And second, we need a comprehensive model. We now have in the Mexican model the telecommunications reform for the supply side, and we're working in a broadband plan to have it even more clear in terms of a roadmap for implementation. Plus, we have the digital national strategy for the demand side. And these include all the elements: coverage and capacity of networks, IT equipment for correct and full use of these networks, software, applications, e-government, health, education, open data, etc. Skills, very important. So developing countries have a double challenge. On the one hand, we need to tackle new challenges, such as internet governance, cybersecurity, and at the same time, we still need to work in access to broadband and bridging the digital divide. So we need to increment those benefits of those who are already in the digital world, and at the same time, we can't stop working in introducing more population to this digital world. The correct implementation of this comprehensive model, supply and demand, is what can be the engine for development through ICT. Thank you.
Thank you, Mónica, for that wonderful intervention, because I think that what we have seen is that when you are talking about the levers for the success of the implementation in Mexico, you were concurring quite a lot to what Robert was mentioning at the beginning. So we have identified these key levers that are there, both from the supply and the demand, and you were already mentioning which were some of the challenges that you are facing when you want to actually implement. And I believe that we are going to talk a little bit about that afterwards with the rest of the panelists as well. But before that, I would like to turn to Wen-Hsin, because if we look at the Global Information Technology Report, for example, as a tool to guide us and benchmark how different economies are doing, we see that Taiwan actually is performing very, very strongly. So could you share with the audience a little bit, which are the levers or some of the success factors that have allowed Taiwan to go up so much and to really take quite a good benefit of what ICT can provide for the society?
Okay, thank you very much. I think just now we were talking about the ICT technology infrastructure, the deployment to all over the country. And when you mention the government's role, you talk about regulation, talk about the lawmaker to approve some law. I like to look at this issue, ICT, in a different angle. From my own point of view, I think the ICT can have two aspects. One is the ICT infrastructure, another is the ICT applications. For the infrastructure, we are talking about like a broadband communication, smartphone, smart whatever, the internet, the mobile phone, the social networking. Yesterday, Monetary Beñat gave a remarkable presentation, keynote speech on the global state of ICT readiness. So it talked about the coverage of the ICT, the use of the ICT, the affordability, the government effectiveness. And now I want to look at another issue, which is the ICT applications. When we talk about the applications, we talk about like a smart grid, the telematics, the smart city, the police crime protection system, e-learning, and so on and so forth. So the basic idea is what to do with ICT in order to benefit economic growth, the positive social impact, and the human well-being. And we talk about how to design and implement the system to achieve those goals. When we have the ICT infrastructure and we want to build up a system on top of it, it looks like very promising. Once we have some software, hardware, the things will be done and that will be worked. But from my own experience, it's not so easy. So this is something I'd like to share with you. I can use one example we have been done in Taiwan, which is the pilot project for AMI, means automatic metering infrastructure, which is use some networking connection to automatically read the electrical power meter, okay, send it to the control center. The idea itself is rather simple. Okay, you just connect all the sensors, all the meters. Okay, but when we started work on this early several years ago, when the technology is not mature enough, and when this concept is not very popular in the world, we face a few different challenges. For instance, the electrical power company, the management level, when you have a new system, which means a new investment, and when the technology is not mature enough, you have a risk of a failure. There's someone once said, if it aren't broke, don't fix it. So why bother even to replace it? And that's something or obstacle or challenge we face. Another issue for the working people, when you have a new system, means you have new extensive training to transfer them from the old way to do work into the new way. And sometimes that implies the loss of the job. It's a very painful experience for the individual, for their family, and for the community. And it's something we need to resolve. So I'd like to use this example to elaborate a little bit about when you want to deploy ICT applications, what the obstacles, or I would say the challenges you will face along the way. Number one, I think the most challenge is consensus. The consensus among the government, the lawmakers, the news media, and the ordinary citizen. Even within the government, the cross-government agencies, they have their own budget, they have their own expertise, they have their own care, so that they have their own priority. They may not fully or 100% support to the highest priority. The lawmaker usually represent the different interests of the group, so sometimes it's conflict to each other. How to coordinate, how to make all the opinions align together is very difficult. The news media and the ordinary citizen, sometimes they just, from their intuition, they say, okay, I just don't want it, there's no reason. So how to make them to work together is very difficult. The number two, I would say, is cross-discipline. When you want to make a new system, the domain knowledge is very important. Okay, so you, for instance, like the case I just mentioned, is an electrical power system. They have their own language. And then there's a platform of the system itself, which is purely or typically the ICT or IT technology. The people over there, they are talking about the information technology, communication technology. And under it, there's a sensor level, there's a hardware level, there's the devices and the equipment. Those are all different people. And other than that, there's the owner of the system, for instance, like the power company. And there's a user, that's each household people who pays the bill for this system. So if you want to put them all together, work together, speak the same language, it's extremely difficult. The third part I think is also important is technology itself. Technology driven. I think the investment of the R&D can never be stopped. Even you think the ICT infrastructure is already there, but it's not just simply add something on the system. A specific problem needs a specific solution. Just like the screwdriver, you cannot just use one size of the screwdriver to drive all the screws with different shape, different size. So you need to have a specific solution, which means continuous investment on the R&D, continuous technology development. It needs the consensus from the taxpayer. So among all those issues I was talking about, it covers the challenge on the way ahead to make the ICT really benefit to our economical growth, to our positive social impact, to the human well-being, and to move the whole thing forward, move the civilization forward. I think that there's a challenge, but when the timing is right, when the environment is shaped up, I think that will make things easier. So,
thanks, Wen-Hsin, and thanks for sharing with us.